Hello, my name is James Turnbull, and I specialize in family, wealth, and business succession planning. Most of what I do involves talking to people face to face, but I also run or have organized an online training session for people from, it's not just the European region, but from around the world who are interested in learning more about these topics. Today's module I have decided to put online for free, mainly because I think this is a topic, and the topic is, by the way, family dynasties. It's a topic in which there is quite a lot of misunderstanding, where I see a lot of attempts at creating family dynasties that are mostly right, but also sometimes fatally flawed. So it's an area where there is misinformation, misunderstanding, and an area where I think I can help. So please enjoy this video. If you would like to see more similar videos or learn more on these topics and themes, you can visit my website, www.uplift.cz. So, today's module is, what is a family dynasty? I'm going to answer that question, and I'm also going to look at some of the key issues and key considerations that you would need to take into account when you are creating your own family dynasty. Or, in fact, do you need to or should you create your own family dynasty? A lot of what I talk about this course is a lot of it about trusts or foundations or about money. But family dynasties are a little bit different from that, because trusts and foundations and money, these are only tools to achieve something greater. A family dynasty goes far beyond that. So rather than focusing on the tools, today we're going to focus on the structure itself, the concepts, the ideas. And a family dynasty, in truth, is not about tools at all. It's not about legal structures. It's not a trust. It's not a foundation. It is about people. It's about how do we manage the people and how do we manage the relationships between those people in our family. So people, and I think above all about relationships to each other and relationships towards the family. Family dynasties are designed to last a long, long time. They are created by somebody at the beginning, but they take on lives of their own. But we go back to the beginning and say, okay, somebody created them. Why? What are the reasons for doing that? The most common reason that I see families create family dynasties, I can put it very bluntly, as I can say, is to protect children from themselves. If you are participating in my course, you will know that I very much like the quotation from Warren Buffett, where he says, to paraphrase, that he wants to give his children enough money to do something, but not enough money to do nothing. And that underlies the creation of most family dynasties. The idea that we do not simply want to pass a very substantial pool of wealth on to the next generation, because we have concerns that the next generation may not treat that wealth correctly, and that wealth may not be a positive thing for the next generation. So what we're trying to do instead is to create a core, what I call a core pillar of family wealth. It means that we create something which is not just about passing assets and money from one generation to the next generation, but it's something that's designed to be multi-generational. It's designed to last for the children, provide benefit for the children, but provide benefit also for the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren, and potentially on into the future. The other thing we're trying to do is we're trying to keep wealth intact, because if people inherit wealth, then immediately that happens, it's divided by the number of people involved. So a typical birth rate in Europe is something like 2. So that means every generation the wealth is split into 2 pieces. And it doesn't take long until there is fragmentation, and what was substantial, what was powerful, what was valuable, what was important is diluted. The other reason we need to think about keeping wealth intact is because of divorce. So if somebody inherits something, part of the family wealth, subsequently gets divorced, there is a chance that that wealth will pass outside the family. In some countries, there are also issues with inheritance tax. So if the wealth is not passed from generation to generation, but rather held in a central pillar or central pool, then that wealth should be, let's say, less vulnerable to inheritance tax problems. Probably the most famous users of the family dynasty context are the aristocracy. For them, it makes enormous sense because they have a castle, they have an estate, and they need a system for passing that castle and those lands and that estate on from generation to generation while keeping that castle, those lands intact. And you can see great examples of that throughout society. Here's a really good one. The British royal family are a great example of a family dynasty. And they have survived for many, many hundreds of years and will continue to survive for many hundreds of years into the future. Of course, their method of passing the wealth is maybe a little bit old-fashioned because they have been working on the basis of everything goes to the oldest son, or now, of course, the oldest child. But that kind of cuts the second cousins and more distant relatives, leaves them a little bit out in the cold. So that's a mechanism, maybe not the right mechanism, but the concept, the idea of creating something that survives from generation to generation. It's not about the individual people in the generations, it's about the family as a whole. The idea is very important, and that's the key thing. What we're trying to do here is not to create wealth in the hands of individuals. We are trying to create a great family. And if you think about the families in the world that you know, there are a number of great families out there whose wealth has survived from generation to generation using some sort of family dynasty structure. Okay, so let's try and define more clearly what it is that we're talking about. So in this illustration, I have tried to demonstrate what I would call a typical family succession concept, where we have wealth that is flowing from one generation at the top to children in the first row, and perhaps on to grandchildren in the second row. And for most families, that is about as far as their planning gets, because they don't need to go any further than that. And anyway, it's hard to think beyond that. But a family dynasty is a little bit different, because a family dynasty says that we are creating something that will survive not just one generational transfer, not just 2, not just 3, but it will go on and on and on and provide wealth and security and protection to generation after generation. If you draw it as wine glasses, it looks a bit complicated and frightening. And as we will see later on in this video, there are actually some quite big problems. So I prefer at this stage to visualize it as a pillar. We have at the core of the family, not the people, but the family, we have a pillar of wealth, which is there to support and protect and nurture and benefit all the members of the family from generation to generation. Put it another way, what it means is that the children don't get all the money. Instead, the children get some money or some benefit according to some set of rules which the founder or the family defines together. And what are the exact rules will really vary from family to family. But here are some typical examples. So the kind of things that as a descendant you can expect if your family has a family dynasty structure. You can expect, for example, potentially some help buying your first house. If you get married, you might expect some help with the wedding. Very importantly, you should expect help, this very typical, very common help with education. So you should not be constrained in your educational goals and ambitions by money. That is one of the things that the family dynasty structure, the reasons that it is there. Very often also I've drawn a shopping basket here, I'm not sure it's the right illustration. There is this concept of saying that we want to make sure that everybody in the family has a decent or a minimum or basic standard of living. So the idea is not to replace ambition, not to replace the motivation for people to work hard in life, to succeed, to achieve, to gain things. But on the other hand, we do want to provide some kind of backstop so that if everything goes wrong, if those ambitious plans don't work out, there is some safety net, there is some basic protection. But for most families, this doesn't mean a life of luxury. It means simply the basics of the necessities of life. Some families decide that travel is important. I personally find that to be a great idea, to say that travel, exploring the world, seeing different cultures, broadens the mind, makes a richer and better person. So it may be that the family dynasty allocates some money for descendants to travel. And the last picture here is a rocket. Pretty hard to find a picture for what I really wanted. This is talking about if family members have business ideas, if they have startup ideas, and they want some financial help, then the family dynasty might decide to help them by investing in the startup, perhaps through lending money or investing in the business itself. One of the great things about that is if the startup is successful, then the whole family shares in the benefit of that result. But those are examples. I think what the point is that a family dynasty is not designed just to pass the money to the next generation and let them do whatever they want with it, fritter it away, destroy it, maybe do a good job of looking after it, I don't know, but we're taking that possibility away and saying, no, the money stays in the pillar, in the core. The core is there to support, nurture, and protect the family by doing these kind of things, maybe some other things, but it's there as a safety net, as a protection. One more thing that family dynasties do very commonly is they also look outside the family to society as a whole. And especially if there is more money in the dynasty or in the structure than is needed, then there can be agreed and common philanthropic goals, things that the family wishes to achieve, that it wishes to support through charity or in other ways in relation to the society around them. And that's really, really important and something that people must not overlook. Okay, so that's what it is. How do we make it? For most families, we start with the idea of a family constitution. I really recommend that this is a written document. It doesn't have to be. It can be something that is in the minds of people. But personally, I find it's really, really helpful to write it down. For some families, they decide they would like to create for themselves a family mission or mission statement. In my experience, for a lot of people, that's a little bit challenging. It's a bit too hard to come up with something so concise as that. But if you can, if your family has the ability to do that, then fantastic. Otherwise, it's more often just a set of ideas and aspirations and visions and goals. And the family constitution is written by, we can call the person the founder, the patriarch, the matriarch, the person at the beginning of the tree, the person who creates the original wealth. But most good family constitutions are not written as dictates. They are written usually in discussion, in consultation with other members of the family. Because if everybody agrees, if everybody, or at least everybody who's around at the beginning, if everybody signs on to this vision, to these goals, to these aspirations, then they are much more powerful and much more effective. And by the way, this document, this family constitution, is not a legal document. It's just, maybe the lawyer could help you write it, but it's not a legally important document. It's more like the guidelines, the rules, the visions, the goals, the things that the family want to achieve. And again, in this document, we will set out what it is that the family can expect to receive from the dynasty, but usually not as fixed rules, because you need to have always some flexibility, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's issued, it's signed, ideally by everybody who's an adult at the beginning. It means the founder, his or her spouse, the children, any adult grandchildren, so that we have some common idea of what is our family, what does it mean, what are our goals, where are we going. One other important question that it should answer is, who is family? It sounds like a silly question, but actually you need to consider it. Many families, they simply go with, which I think is a wise approach, they go with blood descendants of the founder, or of the patriarch, the matriarch, the person at the beginning. If you do that, then you are excluding spouses. You are saying spouses, at least for the definition of our family dynasty, are not family. And that's probably a good idea, because you are recognizing that one of the goals is to keep the family wealth together, and it should not be attacked, damaged, destroyed, weakened by potential divorce. On the other hand, if one of the children, grandchildren, dies and leaves a widow or widower, then there's another argument which says, well, actually, maybe in that situation, we would like the widower or the widow to be considered as family, because we would like to support that person. But of course, that those rights then should not pass on to the next generation. So the question of who is family, what is family, is a question that should be discussed, considered, and talked about at the time that the family constitution is made. Okay, great. So we've got this document which has got some kind of vision in it, probably a document. I think it should be a document, but we have at least some kind of vision, some kind of clear idea of what the future looks like, not just for the founder, but for the next generation and for the generations after that. Why do we have the wealth? What is the wealth for? And how does it support our family? And what is also, maybe we start to think about, what is the involvement, the role of our family in relation to the wealth? And from that, you very often see the creation of something called a family council. This is a formal, usually it's a formal body with formal rules, that holds meetings, where family members get to vote, where decisions are made, even if in the beginning the number of people in the family is really small, it's still important to create this structure. And the reason why is because you might start with 2 or 3 or 4 people, but over time, as we know, you're going to end up with more. And if you set the rules, the structures at the very beginning, then that is very helpful. And even if it is only a few people, it's really useful to sit down and meet and talk about these issues on a regular basis. And I would say at least once a year, but depending on your family, more often. What a lot of families do is they say, okay, this is great. We need to have a family dynasty, family wealth planning meeting. But it's also a great chance for us to have a family get-together. So it can be that there is a family retreat. It may be held in some nice donation. It would be typical for the family wealth to pay for the costs of the hotel and the accommodation and so on. And of course, who comes to the retreat? Who comes to the retreat is the whole family. The whole family meaning wives, children, grandchildren, maybe girlfriends, partners. Who comes to the meeting? Only the core family. The other issue with core family is age. So you have 2-year-olds who are 2-year-old grandchildren. They are part of core family, but they probably don't want to, they don't have a useful input to the meeting. And 16-year-olds, should they be allowed to attend the meeting? Should they be allowed to vote? These are open questions. In my opinion, it's really useful if the younger generations are involved in these processes as early as possible. So I would be encouraging 16-year-olds to, if they're sufficiently interested, to attend the meeting, but I wouldn't be giving them a vote. Some families, for example, say that 18-year-olds can attend the meeting and contribute, but also don't get the vote. And they limit the vote to family members who are, for example, older than 25. But this is a forum for the family to be heard, for the family to express its views and wishes. But this is also not intended to be a democracy. And the reason why it's not intended to be a democracy is because money is a very powerful motivator. And with enough money, there is a lot of motivation for people in the second generation, for example, after the founder has passed on, for them to decide together, let's distribute all the money equally between us. And if that's what you permit, then you don't have a family dynasty anymore. You have allowed the family to destroy it. So, in my experience, the best way to do this is to create some rules at the very beginning, rules that are set out in that family constitution, rules that may also be set out in other documents. For example, the founder may create some letter of wishes. And those rules are enforced by somebody. They can be enforced by a family member. They can also be enforced by somebody I like to call an enforcer. It's somebody who has the job of looking at what the family council wants to do and saying, okay, that's great. Does it agree with, is it consistent with the rules, with the principles, with the mission that we set at the beginning? If so, then that's fine. But if the family wants to do something that is not consistent with those rules, then the function of the enforcer is to veto that decision, to stop them, for example, from winding up the structure. And I have a picture of a baton. It's really important because we need some process for passing this responsibility, this control function. It needs to pass from one generation to the next generation, to the next generation, and so on. And it's best, in my opinion, if that part of the process is kept outside the family. Because people inside the family are, to be honest, they're biased. They have their own interest, their own self-interest, or the interests of their own family members, or their branch of the family at heart. So a good family dynasty structure very often has some external person, advisor, who is there simply to supervise, to monitor, to check that things are being done the way that they should, but otherwise, as much as possible, to allow the family the freedom to make the decisions that they want to make. And one more kind of connected issue with that is that we create something at the beginning. We create some structures. We create some rules. It goes from generation to generation. One thing that is really useful is to also provide, because we have this core of family wealth, to provide some encouragement for successful children, successful grandchildren, and so on, to contribute themselves to that pillar of wealth. So if a child has a successful career, they may decide to leave some of their own wealth directly to their children, but they may also decide to contribute some of that wealth to the family dynasty. So, the role of family. The role of family is to be involved to the extent that they want to be involved through the family council. We cannot force them to be involved, so some of them may simply not be interested, and that's fine. For those that are interested, then the family council gives them a voice to be heard and a voice to express their opinions, but it does not give them the power to destroy the dynasty, and it does not give them the power to act unfairly. It's worth thinking about, do you want to give extra power to some people? For example, if there is a family business, it is very common to give family members who are working as employees in the family business, to give them a little bit more power on the family council, for example, more votes. And by the way, working in the family business doesn't mean as a CEO, it could be, but also in the mailroom or doing deliveries, because what we do want to do is we do want to encourage and make the family interested in being involved in the family wealth, in the family business. So that all sounds really nice. There's lots of room for customization. One of the nice things about all of this is that you come up with the first draft, you can implement that, and as long as the founder, the matriarch, patriarch, as long as they're alive, you can keep on adjusting and tweaking the structure until you are happy with it. As I've said before, usually better to do something than spend time thinking and talking and ending up doing nothing. So if you do something and it's imperfect, that's fine. You can adjust, improve, and so on as you go along. Family dynasty, however, does have one problem that you need to at least address, think about a little bit at the very beginning. This is something that's very commonly overlooked. Okay, so if you go back to an earlier slide, you will see we talked about this cascade where wealth is, or support from the family dynasty is flowing from one generation to the next generation. And of course, as we have more and more generations, we have more and more people until we have a lot of people. Another way of looking at this is the people say it's the wheat on the chessboard. Sometimes it's the rice on the chessboard. I'm not sure which is correct. The story where you put 1 grain of rice on square one and you keep doubling. And that's what we're going to get, by the way, because the birth rate is about 2. So every generation we can expect, on average, roughly twice as many people. So in the first generation you have 1, second generation you have 2. That's absolutely fine, not a problem, completely manageable. Then you have 4, also fine. Then you have 8, again, not a problem. 16, still okay. But you can see once we get out to about here, then we get to some very big numbers, and the whole structure becomes unmanageable. It becomes unmanageable because there are too many people. So the possibility for any individual to have a voice is probably diluted. And it becomes unmanageable because there are too many people and not enough money. So the potential demand on that pool of family wealth is stronger and stronger, divided by more and more people, and so the potential benefit for each individual person is really quite small. And eventually it just doesn't work anymore. Some people, of course, they're optimistic and they say, yes, but I can increase the family wealth in line with the increase of the generations. So all I've got to do is double the family wealth every generation. And if you can do that, then fantastic, you don't have a problem. But the reality is that that is probably quite a high goal to aim for. There's another thing to think about. And that is, I've got Queen Victoria here. There's what's called the rule against perpetuities. There's a rule in English law which says that you, to paraphrase, that you shouldn't really lock money or assets away from people forever. There must be a time when the things end and the money is paid to the people. And the reason I've got Queen Victoria there is in the old days, when I was a junior lawyer, we used to talk about a rule which said the life in being plus 21 years. So the longest you could lock money away was the lifetime of somebody who was alive at the moment that you created the structure, plus 21 years. And what we used to use in those days was the descendants of Queen Victoria. And the reason for that was because we know who they are. There's a lot of them, and they live for a long time. Usually the longest lived will be for about 100 years. And then you get another 21, so that gives you 121 years. And after that, you had to close everything down and pay out the money. So whether you're a family dynasty, and by the way, it's possible to bypass. There are a lot of jurisdictions now where these rules don't apply, but there are some jurisdictions where they do apply. You need to think about, what am I doing now? What am I doing in the first generation? What am I doing in the next generation? But also, what does it look like in 100 years? And how am I going to manage that? Am I going to distribute all the money out willy-nilly to hundreds of people, a small, tiny amount to each person? That seems a little bit counterintuitive and frustrates the goal that we're trying to achieve. So in other families, you talk about what mechanism do I have to get past the 100 years, to do the first 100 years, and then another 100 years, but also to rationalize, to control, to manage who it is that is considered to be family as we go along. So the British royal family, they've got a great system. It's not very politically correct, but it's worked for them for a long time. I am not suggesting you use the same system, but things will happen such as that you may have some family members who are simply not interested in being part of the family. In that case, you need to have some mechanism for buying them out. So if somebody says, I don't want to be part of the family wealth structure anymore, and you, the trustees or the family council or whoever, says, that's fine, here is some money, some settlement, and we will remove you from the family tree, or at least remove you from the family tree in this context. That maybe solves a few problems. further down the path, you simply will have too many people. So you need to think about how are you going to deal with that. And it may be that you create some rules about family branches and that you have different criteria. So instead of trying to support everybody, you may decide to simply support the people who are most in need. Or you may simply say, look, we've reached the end of the line and now the money goes to charity. So these are issues that there are multiple solutions to this, but these are issues that need to be thought about. Another final important word. This is a very powerful and positive thing for families and for founders, patriarchs and matriarchs to do. It's also potentially a little bit scary because they are frightened that by signing all these documents, they will somehow lose control and flexibility of their own wealth during their lifetime. And it is very, very important to design the structures so that that does not happen, to reassure them. So the structure must be designed in a way that is completely still within the control of the founder at the beginning. Otherwise, they won't agree to this. So they need the ability to change the rules as much as they want. They ideally need the ability to unwind or cancel the structure if they change their mind. If you give all those things to them, then they will feel much more secure and much better about this and say, okay, I am building something for the future, but it doesn't affect me now. Another topic, depending on the size of the family, but for most families who are thinking about a family dynasty, then the size will be substantial. Another topic is thinking about the idea of a family office. A family office is a structure. It's an office with people who work there, whose job it is to manage the family wealth on behalf of the family. There are many family offices in the world. This is the web page of Bezos Expeditions, which is Jeff Bezos's, the founder of Amazon. It's his family office. Interesting example, quite big. They manage $108 billion US, and they have 159 employees. Not every family will have a family office that is quite that big, but it can be that you have one or two employees who are there to coordinate, to manage, and to make sure that things work. And that's, I've got to say, not a bad idea. A lot of what I do in this course is about trusts and private family foundations. I haven't talked about them much during this module. The question is a trust or a private family foundation the right tool to create your family dynasty? And the answer, in my opinion, is no, it's not, for a few reasons. Number one, if you use a trust properly, then you will destroy democracy within the family. You will take away the freedom of the subsequent generations to do what they want with the money. And there's also an argument that says that you might encourage them to develop some, let's say, bad behaviors. So it's not the right tool, but on the other hand, it's better than any of the other tools. So yes, it is the right tool. It's the only way that I can think of, the only way I know of, to prevent the disintegration and destruction of the core pool of family wealth. So if you want to leave a legacy, if you want to create something for the future, then a family dynasty and probably a trust or a foundation at the core of that dynasty is the way to go. That's all from me today. I haven't answered every question. I apologize. It's not possible to answer every question because every family is different. What I have done, I hope, is given you some ideas and some food for thought, which will help you on your own journey to creating your own family dynasty. I've said it before many times. As you do that, you need help. You need the help of professional advisors who can make sure that what you're doing is going to work and who's going to help you think about the key issues that you need to consider. So that's all from me today. Thank you for listening. I apologize it's quite long, but I hope you found it useful and enjoyable. Thank you.